If you love participating in the Christmas pickle tradition, or this is your very first time jumping in, this is going to be a lot of fun and festive. I am so excited today to make a wheat stitch Christmas pickle with you. This is incredibly fun and festive. If you are not familiar with the Christmas pickle tradition, I've got some cute printables to go with this that explains the whole thing. But essentially, hiding one of these on your tree for Christmas morning for someone to find, and it's a game, whoever finds it first will get a special little prize. It can just be an extra pancake at breakfast, whatever it may be, just bragging rights. This is a really fun tradition, and it's fun to even hide it around each season to see who can find it next. So this is super quick, super easy, and we're going to talk about what you can do with this for gift giving or markets. But first, let's talk about the yarn. So this is the Malabrigo Rios. This is the worsted weight in Fresco y Seco. And this yarn is absolutely squishy and wonderful. And I chose it because I love the way that the color inflections work in this, especially being hand dyed. Now, can you use any yarn you want for this? Absolutely. You could use big yarn and make a really big pickle. You could go fingering weight yarn and make a smaller pickle. This pattern is so diverse, it's just really easy to do. We're just going to be making a rectangle, so that's going to make it super quick and simple. Now, of course, today you will also need a 4mm crochet hook. If you are adjusting the yarn, you will want to adjust the hook. You'll want yarn needle to weave in those ends, scissors to fasten them off, and then a stitch marker at the beginning or end of each row if you're not familiar with the stitch, especially because we're actually going to be starting and stopping a little bit different, even if you've done this stitch before, so you'll want one just to keep track of the stitches in the row so you don't have to count every single row. Now, the twine I suggest for tying to the top, we're going to go over that. And then also if you're making these printables. Now, these printables are super cute. They can be used as gift tags. These you are able to use at markets or gift giving, whatever you want to do. I have given a lot of options for this one. I really want to make your holiday season as easy as possible. I've started off with a big tag for that Christmas pickle tradition. If you've never heard about it, it explains it in 2 different ways. I love to give options to see which one people like more. And then I have all these smaller tags as well that makes it really easy to gift these pickles or to sell them at markets. I predict that these would be really big at markets because they're really popular this time of year. The handmade touch, people love handmade at the holidays, and it's really easy to crochet. So you'll be able to whip up a lot of these really quick. So it could be a big market seller. If you are selling at markets, I wish you the best. I hope that you sell a ton. Come on into the Brianna K community if you're gifting and selling these and let me know how they do. I always just love to have that information so I can make plans on helping you as much as I can in the future. So this is going to be super quick and simple. We're going to jump right in. We're going to make a rectangle and we're going to turn it into a fabulous Christmas pickle. And also the supply you will need for today's video is some fiber fill, or you can use some yarn scraps to stuff the pickle. Now, to get started with this Christmas pickle, we are going to create a slip knot and then place that onto our hook. And we're going to start by chaining 21. Now, after chaining 21, we are going to slip stitch in the second chain from the hook. And if you need to, mark this as the first stitch of this row. I really think you should mark it if this is your first time making the pickle. And then we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch. And now we're going to single crochet until we get to the last 2 stitches of this row. And I like to single crochet in those back humps. I just like the way that the rows start when they're worked in the back humps of those chain stitches. So single crochet until you have 2 stitches left for row 1. Now with 2 stitches left for row 1, we will slip stitch into the last 2 stitches, and that will give us 20 stitches for this row, and that's going to be our stitch count throughout. Now at the end of row 1, we are simply going to be turning our work and working row 2. So we're going to turn here, leaving that tail end. We're going to come back and use it later. And we're going to chain 1. This does not count as a stitch. It's just a turning chain. And now in the back loop only, we're going to slip stitch in the first 2 stitches of this row. And now we're going to single crochet in the back loop only. So only working that back loop, not through both loops. Single crochet in the back loop only until there are 2 stitches left in row 2. Once we are to the last 2 stitches of row 2, we will slip stitch into the last 2 stitches in the back loop only for this row. And now we're going to turn our work and begin row 3. And row 3 and row 4 are the same. So row 3 and row 4 will be the same instructions. We're going to chain 1 as our turning chain. We will slip stitch into the back loop only of the first 2 stitches of the row. And now we're going to start the modified puff stitch repeat. So we're going to skip the next stitch and single crochet into the next. And I'm working through both loops here. And now we're going to go back to that skip stitch. We're going to yarn over, insert our hook into that skip stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and pull up that loop to the height of the first loop on your hook. Yarn over and insert into the same skipped stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. This means that now we have 5 loops on our hook. We will yarn over and pull through 4 of those loops, and then we will yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 loops to complete that modified puff stitch. And now we're going to be repeating those last 2 steps all the way across until the last 2 stitches of this row. So that is to skip the next stitch and single crochet into the next, and then work a modified puff stitch back into that skipped stitch. And this is what creates that beautiful wheat stitch look. So we will continue to do this all the way to the end of the row until there are 2 stitches left for row 3. Now with 2 stitches left in row 3, we will slip stitch through that back loop only for those last 2 stitches. And now we're going to turn our work and start row 4, which is simply a repeat of row 3. So we will chain 1 and slip stitch 2 stitches in those back loops only. And now we're going to work that puff stitch repeat by skipping 1 and single crocheting to the next. Working back into that skip stitch, we'll work a modified puff. We will work that all the way to the end of the row until we have 2 stitches left, and we'll slip stitch in the back loop only for the last 2 stitches to complete row 4. Now our next steps are simply to repeat a 4-row repeat. So after completing row 4, we're going to be doing rows 5 and 6 as single crocheting in the back loop only with the 2 slip stitches on each end. So you'll slip stitch in the back loop only for 2 stitches, single crochet in the back loop only until the last 2 stitches, and slip stitch in the last 2, and that's for rows 5 and 6. And now for rows 7 and 8, we're simply repeating 3 and 4. Now we're just going to do that until we have a total of 16 rows or 4 total stitch pattern repeats. And that's it. Now we're ready to complete our pickle. We notice it curls at the top and the bottom. That's what we want, but it's basically a rectangle. Now the next step we need to do is seaming this, and there are 2 ways to seam it, and you can pick whichever one you like. I like to keep things as clean as possible, as professional as possible on the outside. So the way I found that is the least noticeable seam that is a slip stitch seam is when we take the right side of our fabric facing us and then we fold them together, and now the wrong side of our fabric is on the outside, and then we're going to slip stitch this together. Now if you prefer to sew it with a yarn and needle, you can fasten off and you can sew this seam, and you can sew it from either side however you want, whichever you feel that looks best. But this is inside out essentially, and I am going to seam it and then flip it. So I've chained 1, and I am going to go through the very first slip stitch. I'm working through all loops here. The very first slip stitch of my current row, and then I'm going to go through the very first slip stitch of my very first row, yarn over and slip stitch those together. And I'm going to do that all the way down. So just working from my current row and my first row, slip stitching those stitches together for all 20 stitches across. This is going to hide my slip stitching on the inside of my work and make it nice and clean on the outside. Now that we have slip stitched all the way across, we are going to leave a long tail and fasten off. Make sure you're leaving a decent long tail here because we're actually going to weave it up the side and then need enough to close around that other end. So grab your scissors and fasten off a pretty long tail. Now I'm grabbing my yarn needle because we are already going to start weaving this end that we just fastened off. Now for this, we are going to be flipping it in a minute. We still have the wrong side facing us, but we're going to move this strand to this side since we need to close the bottom and the top. But we'll be using this strand not only to close this other side, but also to kind of shape our pickle. So I just want to make sure I'm securing this side by going through my stitch before I start seaming down this other side. I'm going to wrap it around twice along that stitch. And now I'm simply going to be weaving it all the way up across my slip stitches to that other side. We don't want to weave too aggressively. We just want to weave up stitches to the other side because once we pull on this, that will help give our pickle a little bit of a curve, which is what we want. We want to make it look like a real pickle. So now that we have done that to the one side, we have yarn on each side of this pickle, and I'm going to take this and flip it inside out. You kind of have to squirm it a little bit to get started, but we want to make sure that we are getting the right side facing out. So we're just going to reverse this pickle. And now we are ready to seam the top and bottom. It's actually really hard to tell where we joined here, which is fantastic. And we are going to first be working on the top. Now make sure that your strand that's hanging out on that bottom comes out to that other side. You want to pull it through. And now we have a strand at top and bottom, and we are going to close this top. But before we close this top, we are going to want to make something to sit inside of there to hang it. Now I have done twine. I'm going to show you how to do that. If you want to just close this and add ribbon later by sewing it through, please feel free to do so. I'm just going to show you how to add some twine as we go. Now I have cut 2 pieces of twine, approximately 14 inches each, to give myself some room here. So I'm holding them together, and I've folded them in half, and I'm going to create a knot at the bottom of these with that open end. And this is intended to make a pretty thick knot. Now, if you want to do this again, you want to tie it around again, you can cut a little bit longer, but that's a pretty thick knot there. And that's what we're going to use to put inside of this before we close. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to weave around the top of this pickle. Now, before we start weaving, we want to shape it just ever so slightly. And remember how I said we could pull on this strand? If we pull on this strand, it kind of cinches one side of this pickle down, and that way it curves a little bit better in the end. And that will give it a little bit more curve on one side. And now we are going to loop around the edges here of the top. So I just loop through 1 stitch per edge or every other stitch. So on those ridges all the way around, we're just going to be cinching this closed. And as we loop through, once we're ready to pull this, it will close that top and then we'll reinforce it. Now I'm not pulling just yet because I want to put my knot that we just made with that twine inside of there. Now, once we've gone all the way around, we will want to take our twine strand and stick it inside the pickle at the top. And making sure that that knot is right inside the top of that. And then we can take this end and we are going to simply cinch it closed around that knot. And that way that knot sits inside of there and it's not as easy to come out. And now we're going to reinforce that by weaving around again so that it's really tight and that knot can't come out because our hole will be too small for that knot to work its way out. Now, once you have secured your end, you can weave it in and then fasten off. And the next step we'll want to do is to stuff this pickle because we're going to be closing that bottom. So you want to keep this strand out, but we'll want to add some stuffing inside this pickle to create that shape but you might want to use yarn scraps. I have some fiberfill here. Whatever you prefer, we are simply just going to take it and stick it in all the way to the other side. Now, if you need to, you can also use your crochet hook to help stuff that in there. Now, the number one thing about stuffing anything that's amigurumi is you do not want to overstuff. Things actually look cuter understuffed than overstuffed, in my opinion. You don't want to be stuffing it so much that it loses the ability to take shape, like it's so stiff, or that you've stuffed it to where your stitches look like they are bursting and you can see stuffing through them. So careful not to overstuff, and we're going to fill out that pickle with leaving that tail end sticking out. Now, once you have your pickle stuffed to the right amount, you'll want to take your yarn needle and close the bottom the same way that we did the top, and then weave in your end. Now fasten off, and that's it. We are done. That is so quick. So now we just want to add a couple details. You can leave this as is. It's really cute. But if you want, you can grab some more twine and you can tie a bow around the top here, or a red bow would look really cute as well. And then the last thing to do would be to tie on any type of tag you may want to tie on here. So you can actually take these tags and tie them around here in a bow so that the pickle has a tag with it if you're gifting it or selling it at markets, or you can even tie one of these larger tags on it to explain what this is and gift it to your family members, your coworkers, your friends, or sell it at markets. I just think these are super quick and fun to make. I hope you actually got a few laughs out of today's video. If you're a child at heart like me, you may have found some of the phrases I said a little bit funny. Trust me, I had to start over a few times because I was snickering, and that's okay. I'm good with it because the end result of this pattern is just so much fun. I hope you enjoy these this season, next season, and forever. This could be a really fun family tradition, especially with it being homemade. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and come back for some more fun projects soon.